The Biden-Harris administration has the lowest approval rating of any modern-day president in their first year. This is a surprising turnaround, considering both of the presidential parties amassed more votes than have ever been cast for a presidential campaign in history. Unfortunately, ever since assuming office, the Biden-Harris administration has continued to make very unpopular policy decisions. As the year 2021 departs, it's often beneficial to look back in all that has happened in the last 12 months. As the president poll numbers continue to decline and Americans' confidence in the government is at an all-time low, we have decided to compile a list of the administration's biggest blunders. This is Biden's top 5 policy failures in the year 2021. It's time, my people, let's dive in! Alright, my people, thank you for joining us on this episode of Biden's top 5 biggest policy failures in 2021. It's no surprise that the president, Mr. Joe Biden, is not a popular guy, certainly leading into the year 2022. The reasons why are his policies and his decisions that he has decided to make. So one of those first big decisions that turned people off very fast and quick was his military decisions. So we're going to put in the 5th category, military and law enforcement, or lack of support for those military and law enforcement professionals. So we all seen what happened in Afghanistan. And we do know that Americans elected Mr. Biden to pull us out of Afghanistan. That was his initial campaign promise. That's all good and dandy, that's fine. However, the decision to unilaterally pull out so quick and fast without leaving residual forces behind, without a follow-up plan, that was a failure. Mr. Biden has failed the armed forces and even worse, those people who have contributed to the 20-year success of the mission. All of the people who have helped us all along this mission in Afghanistan, Mr. Biden has left behind. In fact, a lot of them were clinging to cargo planes and trying to get out when we were leaving. However, it was so important to him to make the point that we are out, that he risked our confidence around the world as far as a nation and people willing to work with us and trust us based upon our word. Mr. Biden, you have failed the U.S. military, you have failed the state of Afghanistan, the country, the sovereign nation of Afghanistan, who I understand we might not owe a lot to. However, the people who have helped us, we certainly do. All right, another area is law enforcement. Defund the police movement. You know, Mr. Biden supported that. And a lot of states and local municipalities started doing those kind of things. Well, look, crime is up. All of the numbers are leading in a bad direction. Mr. Joe Biden also said something when he was on the campaign trail about Kyle Rittenhouse, the same Rittenhouse who was convicted, he was not convicted in fact, but he was convicted in a court of Mr. Joe Biden because Joe Biden already declared him guilty.
I just heard a moment ago.
Do you have any reaction?
I didn't watch the trial, so
Do you stand by your past comments equating him to white supremacy?
Well, look, I stand by what the jury has concluded. The jury system works, and we have to abide by it.
By saying he is a white supremacist. This is not doing anything to help. So those things are, in my personal opinion, policy stances, when you support policies that defund the police and reduce bail and do all these things, look at how our cities are going. So that is number 5 in Mr. Biden's top 5 policy failures. All right, my people, number 4. You know, this number 4 thing should be even further down the list. However, the reasons why we have to place it so high up at the top is because there's so many other failures that are even worse. In any other year or any other time, with high numbers like the highest numbers in 20 or 30 years of migrants crossing at the border, when we have police officers rounding up Haitians and doing all this crazy nonsense. The Border Patrol agents aren't properly being supported with proper staffing. Kids are still in cages. Apparently that was a big deal on the campaign trail, but now that it is a reality for Mr. Biden and the administration, they're finding that these facilities, these cages in which they used to call them when other occupants were in the White House, these things are still useful. So kids are still in cages. The stopping remain in Mexico policy. Let's start that back up. I mean, we should just go ahead and do that anyway. But the only reason why this administration is resuming it is because a federal judge said that we have to. And for good reason. If you see these crazy numbers coming from the border, you understand the logical necessity of some of these policies. They're not discriminatory. These policies are keeping our nation safe. Not even that long ago, I do believe earlier this month, a terrorist was spotted and apprehended at the border, an actual terrorist, somebody who really wants to blow up buildings. So it is very important for us to have secured our borders and the border wall. Speaking of our border, another big reason why we have serious policy failures in the Biden administration is immigrants aren't even being tested. While we're so busy in our country mandating all the hardworking first responders and people who have gone to work for America, helped us mandating our military and federal workers, we could care less if the immigrants have coronavirus, because they are in a lot of cases being sent in this country without any kind of testing, any kind of reassurance that they are not only going to run and not show up to their court date, but also infect all of the people around them in the United States, because the Biden administration has started to bus these people into our local cities. So this is another huge policy failure. And then the biggest one is the Biden-Harris administration gave a lot of promises and a large wish list to large constituents, lots of groups of people. They said to the voting rights folks, we're going to do this. And they said to the people who want to push reform on other things, they said they're going to do that. But to the people, the Latino people and the people who really wanted immigration reform, they said they were going to do so much. The Dreamers Act, they said they were going to start policy in the first year. Unfortunately, that too was a lie. So not only are they lying to the general American public, but they are also lying to the direct people who are responsible to get them into office. There is no policy on these issues and other issues that they claim that they were going to tackle in their first year. Unfortunately, when your Build Back Better plan is filled with Democratic goodies, you are so stoked about doing that one thing and passing that one bill, you forget all about your other priorities that you claimed you were going to do. Shame on the Biden-Harris administration for their failures and lack of policy in any manner. It is unfortunate when they do have policy, the Biden-Harris administration, it completely misses the mark. And this brings us into our Biden's third top policy failures of 2021. So third on the list goes to a special place. This one is somewhere where I did not think that we were going. especially if you were to listen to Mr. Joe Biden's words himself.
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory, but I would do everything in my power. Just like I don't think masks have to be made mandatory.
Now that was pre him becoming the president. I am, of course, bringing up the issue of mandates. So I do understand coronavirus has been a serious issue and has killed over 800,000 Americans to this date. However, when you campaign on something and you claim that you are going to do something, I need this administration to understand it is very important for you to follow through, or at least attempt to do that. Now, we are in an era where things start to become politically motivated when we talk about disease and things of that nature, and none of that should occur. Following the science should be our number one biggest thing. And mandates don't always pan out. In fact, a lot of the science say that when you do things like universal mandates for all of workers, or even a specific fringe of workers like military or doctors or medical workers, it doesn't always work. You lose a significant amount of the workforce. Now, a lot of this might not matter to the Biden-Harris administration. However, there are more than one way to go about this. Even recently, the Biden administration, Biden himself said the federal government is not the way out to this pandemic, is not the solution to this pandemic, because they acknowledge that government has some shortfalls.
There is no federal solution. This gets solved at a state level. I'm looking at Governor Sununu on the board here. He talks about that a lot. And it ultimately gets down to where the rubber meets the road, and that's where the patient is in need of help.
Unfortunately, instead of focusing on life-saving treatments like the antibody treatment, or even better, the Pfizer or Merck pill, the prophylaxis that is supposed to help 90% up to 90% with treating serious cases of hospitalization or death, they're not focused on that. But they are focused on making sure that everyone complies with their order, even if that means disenfranchising a large quantity of Americans, even in a specific time period when clearly Americans are riled up, i.e. the insurrection, i.e. the divisive nature of politics today, to where medicine and even medical treatments are being politicized, like ivermectin or the vaccine itself. Everybody has a side, and that is the wrong way to go about it. And instead of being the uniter-in-chief, being someone who's bringing us together, Mr. Biden's policies are not helping. And this, of course, brings us to number 2 on the list of Biden's top 5 biggest policy failures of 2021. So this number 2 one, it almost became number 1 because it is so significant. I, of course, am talking about the inflation / the Build Back Better bill. So, Mr. Biden was warned by a lot of economists and other people before he took office, but especially around the time when he became president, that massive amounts of stimulus could cause inflation. Of course, when you're trying to pass a landmark legislation, you don't think about these things. These things are not concerning to you. Unfortunately, the reality of the situation was Americans have experienced a large influx of cash at one time, coupled with large benefits for the unemployed, other benefits, and child tax credits, which not only increased but doubled. So when you pair all these things together, you not only get a employer-employee work shortage, which we are experiencing, but the biggest thing is when you pump all this money into the economy all at one time, you experience a shortage of goods. And all of the goods that you do currently have, they skyrocket up. I mean, we're talking about lumber, and we're talking about tennis shoes and tires and gasoline, which is at an all-time high. And unfortunately, instead of addressing these problems, Mr. Biden and the administration doubled down on Build Back Better. They already passed one bill, infrastructure bill. Great. The first infrastructure bill our country has had in decades. We haven't been able to do anything. But instead of taking a hand clap and a round of applause with this bipartisan bill, this one that actually was bipartisan, they doubled down. And that progressive wish list got even better. They are so enthralled with this that they are willing to disenfranchise people who identify with the Democratic Party. I am, of course, talking about Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. So much so that they have alienated Mr. Joe Manchin to the point that he no longer supports this high, crazy bill.
I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You're done. This is a no.
This is a no.
And why would he? When inflation is at an all-time high, 30-year high. We're getting a lot of these crazy 30-year highs in Mr. Biden's 1 year of presidency. And this is contributing to his policy failures. Now, of course, none of this that I have brought up is as important as the number one item on the list. And this is the number one item, the number one top biggest policy failure in Mr. Joe Biden's administration. And I won't even have to be long with this one. Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris campaigned on being uniters. They said clearly they were going to unite this broken country because we needed some healing. They said that they were going to do everything they can to help bring Americans together. But instead, they choose to go it alone. In the case of the stimulus bill, where they were saying they were going to compromise, and their first number was 1.9 trillion, and then they ended up compromising by still making it 1.9 trillion, losing countless Republicans in the process. When they said that they weren't going to do mandates, and they said that they weren't going to alienate people who had different beliefs as them. Instead, they have doubled down on the mandates and doubled down on the alienation, calling those people who have decided to do whatever they want for their body unpatriotic.
The vaccine is FDA approved. Over 200 million Americans have gotten at least one shot. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin. Ultimately, those who are not vaccinated will end up paying the price.
And saying that they are ungrateful Americans. That is not the language of the uniter-in-chief.
I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify.
To unite our country and heal the soul of our nation.
It is actually doing quite the opposite. A lot of Mr. Biden's policy decisions are causing him to not only lose the support of the nation, but also ensure that Republicans get elected. If you look at what they were talking about in Virginia, about the critical race theory and teaching it to our children in school, and the fact that it's overblown and no one cares about it.
I believe parents should be in charge of their kids' education.
First of all, this shows how clueless Glenn Youngkin is. He doesn't understand what the laws were because he's never been involved here in helping Virginia. Stop the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Clearly the parents do, and that kind of doctrine and that kind of language is divisive. No one needs to be taught at 5 years old that they are supremacist and they are a part of the problem. And when you continue to go down this road and follow these progressives, you are going to lead yourself in a divisive place, even worse off than we have ever been. My people, it is time to realize that doubling down on this divisive rhetoric is wrong. We need to come together as a country. All of these Americans attacking other Americans over their vaccination status or saying whatever, Mr. Joe Biden coming for people, that is wrong. The problem with our current politics is everyone has their fingers out. We need real solutions and we need real political leaders. Leaders who will not abandon lots of people in Afghanistan. Leaders who will not ignore the southern border. And most importantly, leaders who will not make the economy suffer just because their wish list. We need better representation in this country, and I assure you, it is coming. Thank you, my people, for watching this episode of Vandor the Source. I appreciate you joining us on this last episode of the year. I want everyone out there to have a great and positive, prosperous new year. Make sure you subscribe to this content channel provider, Me The Source. Make sure you hit your notification button, drop a comment and a like. It is time, my people. Let's dive in.